Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Got a crazy story out of Minnesota. Sent me by, surprisingly, 3 different people named Matthew. And also David and Rochelle. But we'll get to that in a second. Rural Minnesota family may be trapped as town declares their access road doesn't exist. So it's not like they're down in a cave they can't get out, or they're at the bottom of the ocean in a submarine. They're trapped on their own property. So this is from the Star Tribune. John Reinen wrote it. The gravel road that the Chrismans live on and that they drove on every single day has disappeared. Now, the gravel is still there, but they're in a fight with local officials just outside of the central Minnesota city. Hillman Township supervisors have informed the Chrismans earlier this month that, in their view, the road has ceased to exist. We're talking about Mora, Minnesota, I believe. Now that it's been officially wiped off the map, the Chrismans wonder whether the road will be a recognized route for mail or package deliveries. And also, will the school bus come to pick up their kids? They've got daughters aged 4, 6, and 8. And most of all, they wonder whether they can be blocked from their home by the neighbor who now controls the only access to their property. And that's someone who's apparently made it clear that he does not like this family. So it's a classic city versus country fight, along with outsiders versus natives. And neither side wound up, after more than 4 years of fighting, neither side's holding back. People very much have the attitude that you're from the cities, you didn't grow up here, you don't belong, says Renee Chrisman. How dare you come up here and think that you should have your road maintained that you pay taxes for? The rhetorical question she asks. The township supervisor owns the land that the road runs across, and that's next to the Chrismans' 120-acre property. And he says they have a thing that they're way better and smarter than everybody else. So this does not just boil down to the legal issues. Apparently there are some personality issues here too. Now, the man who owns the property admits he's given some thought to barricading the road so that the Chrismans can't cross it. He said, supposedly, I could shut that road down now. I have no intention of doing that. Their girls have to get to the school bus, but if I could close that down for the parents, I would. It's always good to go in the national news and say things like that, you know? Meanwhile, for Renee Chrisman, the battle's become a matter of principle. She said, they don't want us to have access to our own home. We thought, are we going to fight this? Or are we going to sit back and let them do this? Now, it was called Hornet Street. Hornet Street. It was laid out as a township road in 1904. It's a half-mile dead end that runs off of County Road 3, not far from Knife Lake. In recent decades, few people have lived on it. Mostly, it's been inhabited by the family, the property whose road it runs across. But the Chrismans property at the end of the road has had several different occupants over the years, and they use that road to get to their property. The Chrismans bought the property in 2013 and moved there from Shoreview in 2017, living at first in a small log cabin before building a new home. As their property had been unoccupied for some time, the township had been maintaining and plowing the road only out to the Schmoll place, which is the Schmoll is the family that owns the property it crosses, which is about half of its length, which left the remainder alone. In 2017, the Chrismans went to a township meeting and asked the board to begin maintaining the road all the way out to their home, which required a vote of all the township electors in attendance. And they voted no. The road was in disrepair, and residents thought the cost of fixing it would be too high, so they chose not to do that. So the Chrismans then fixed the road themselves. Over the next 2 years, they spent tens of thousands of dollars having the road graded and leveled. They built a turnaround for a school bus, but they never went back a second time to formally ask for township maintenance because by that time the dispute had started to heat up. Township refused to plow the road to their place, so the Chrismans did their own plowing, but that didn't please the township either. According to court documents, the sheriff was called 3 times to warn the Chrismans that plowing a public road is against the law, for which they could face misdemeanor charges. So just keep that in mind in Minnesota and in some other places. If there's snow on your street and you go out and you plow it, it's against the law. You got to let the government handle that. So it was strange to say the least that the township refused to plow the road, but wouldn't let them plow it either. Now, Renee Chrisman, again, the wife who lives at the end of the road, said there were other inconsistencies, such as why did the township grant them a permit to build their house on a road it didn't intend to maintain? Interesting question. It's that 40-year rule that the township relied on in declaring that it had lost its right to the road, with the land reverting to the Schmolls, who is the family whose property the road runs across. Township records, the board said, show that the portion of Hornet Street leading to the Chrisman property hadn't been maintained in more than 40 years. Therefore, the township had lost its right to the road. So the township's saying, look, doesn't matter what we want to do, it ain't our road. We can't do that, if that's true. So Andy Chrisman said the 40-year rule had been misapplied. That rule was never intended to cover a road such as this, he says. It was intended to allow landowners to recover the rights to roads that were literally forgotten, fallen into disuse. Ancient paths so far gone, they've been overgrown, hidden, and taken over by nature. Last year, the Chrismans filed a lawsuit in the district court asking that the road be declared a township road and that the township be required to maintain it. In a ruling handed down in June, the judge said no. The judge ruled in favor of the township and said, looks like the township's right on this one. Now, this means the Chrismans have lost access to their home legally, but the township is offering another option. Earlier this summer, it extended a different gravel road on the far side of the land, and it told the family they can access that road to get to their home, but they have to build a 600-foot-long driveway at their own expense through pasture land with a swampy spot in the middle. So that would cost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars, Renee Chrisman said. We selected this option to help the Chrismans, so if the township has lost interest in Hornet Street from the 40-year law, the Chrismans would have legal access to their property, says the board chairman in an email. The Chrismans have asked the judge to reconsider and amend his previous ruling. That request is still pending. Meanwhile, they'll continue living among neighbors who they readily acknowledge don't like them and probably never will. Andy Chrisman says, we're not being treated fairly. The spite train has left the station, and here we are. Pretty much everybody has had enough of them now, said Schmoll. I don't expect that they'll ever find a friendly face in Hillman Township ever again. So it's a weird story happening in Mora, Minnesota. I suspect it's a small town. I don't know how small, but sounds small to me. And there was a road that crosses one piece of property and dead ends into another piece of property. Somebody bought the piece of property, the dead end, that had a cabin on it, but built a house on it and was using this road, and the township would not maintain it or plow it, saying that's not our road. And the people whose property it crosses aren't really cooperating because apparently these couples, these families don't get along. And here's the thing. I know people out there, why can't people just get along with your neighbors? We've all had bad neighbors. We've all had bad neighbors. Well, I guess maybe there's people out there who haven't, but I did a video about a bad neighbor I had a few years ago. And there's a problem because when you go to buy a home or to rent a home, okay, and you're checking out the home, you're walking the property, you're slamming the doors and kicking the tires, so to speak. It's not very often you go over and meet your neighbors and say, hey, what kind of people are you? Are you people jerks? You just assume that the neighbors will be normal people. And this is something you'll agree with me on. We all know that there are weirdos out there, okay? There are weirdos out in the world, and they live someplace. And if you don't play your cards right, you might wind up living next to some weirdos. I'm not saying the people in this story are weirdos. I'm simply saying that sometimes you can't pick your neighbors because one family's living there and another family moves in. Well, the first family's got no choice in the matter. Somebody moves in. You hope you get along, but if you don't, you got problems. And we all know also there are some people you just can't get along with. Probably weirdos. But so this is a weird story, but it's just crazy in that these people were using this road for the length of time only to discover, well, technically it's not a road, and the township is saying, we don't really even want it. And that's the weird part, because we're all so used to the idea of municipalities, cities, townships, counties, states, whatever they might be, the governmental entities that govern a particular area. And there's often an overlap there too. We're so used to those entities trying to grab more. You expect them to say, no, that is ours. No, that's ours too. No, that's the idea that the township is saying, oh no, we don't want that road. No, that road's not ours. That road's not ours. You don't hear about that very often. You hear about bad neighbors a lot. But to hear a township saying, no, we don't want that road, does seem a little unusual, and that would be a surprise. And it would make you wonder, why was a building permit granted to build a home in a spot where technically there were no roads? And that does raise questions, if not eyebrows, or vice versa. So John Reinen wrote for the Star Tribune, and rural Minnesota family may be trapped as town declares their access road doesn't exist anymore. Like I said, this is one of those things that blew my mind. It was sent to me within about an hour by 3 different guys named Matthew, although one calls himself Matt, but I'm guessing it's Matthew. So Matthew sent it, Matt sent it, as did David and Rochelle. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. The brain is a wonderful organ. It starts working from the moment you get up in the morning and doesn't stop until you get into the office.